and welcome to Co-op Gaming Cast episode 5. I'm John,
I'm Genevieve.
and together we don't have a name. But yeah, it's been a while since we did one of these, I guess. Probably more than a month, but
Oh, yes, I thought of a pigeon anecdote, a short one to start out with that I didn't tell you about. I guess this isn't an anecdote. In Chicago by, what's that building that has the Picasso statue? It's like the courthouse or something, is there?
yeah, it's somewhere like Main downtown Chicago, but I couldn't tell you the name of it.
Anyway, they have some kind of like public art thing, or I don't know what it is, but it has like a flame in the middle. And in the winter, all the pigeons who live around there kind of try to keep warm by that crappy little flame thing. I don't know what it is. It's like a gas pilot or something.
Right,
It's
it's just
burning.
a forever flame, and they say it commemorates something.
Okay. And anyway, one time we were there and we saw this really weird looking bird. He didn't look like a pigeon at all. And on closer inspection, it was a pigeon who had flown too close to the flame, or he backed his little butt up too close to the flame.
He had roosted too close to the flame, I think, and
Yeah,
caught
and
fire.
his tail completely burned off, and they don't have any skin there or anything. It's all, their tail is all just feathers. So he completely transformed into looking like a quail or something like that.
Oh, right, without any of that, like, kind of nice streamlined back flap or, like, a spoiler or
Yeah,
stuff. But
yeah.
he was just like a fat little chicken-looking thing, kind of.
He was really cute. He could still kind of fly, but you could tell it was a little harder without having the tail to help steer. I don't know, whatever they use
Yeah,
it for.
it must be like the rudder on a plane.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that was, I guess, a story of a cute and unusual pigeon more than it was an anecdote.
Yeah.
So today we wanted to talk about Ghost Recon.
Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Yeah,
is
Ghost
the full
Recon
name
Wildlands,
of it, I guess.
which we've been playing pretty much since we made our last podcast, I think.
Yeah, I
More
think
or less.
we started, I think around the time that we made the last podcast, we were beginning to get a little bored with the grindy nature of Division 2. Like, I think that's about where we were.
Oh, yeah. So in some, Ghost Recon Wildlands, Tom Clancy Ghost Recon has been absolutely one of the best games we've played together in a really long time.
Right, easily one of like the coolest and easily among the best too. Just like it's hard to say anything even really bad about it. It's
So
such
we've
a cool,
we've been
awesome
really
one.
excited to make this podcast for a while and share a great game that we can finally fully thumbs up recommend. Although we still recommend Path of Exile. We haven't gotten anything on the site about that, but I realized that we were given a lot of thumbs down to a lot of different games we played. Oh, yeah. So first I wanted to talk about why exactly we stopped playing Division 2.
Oh, so I guess many reasons really, but we got to this point in the game where we were kind of like we were upping the world tier, right?
Yeah.
And then, sorry, we were upping the world tier, and it would kind of spit us into this new world tier, and all we had in front of us was 50 more gear levels to earn. Do you remember that? We
Yeah.
were at like gear level like 350, 400. And then the world tier went up and you saw like higher level guns start to drop. And suddenly you were kind of resetting the whole world, and your goal now was to get from 400 to 450. And then once you completed that, your next goal would be from getting 450 to 500, which that's like the max level, I think.
Right.
But
and
it was such a grind.
And then during that time, I think we mentioned in the last one, what happens in the game is like you spend all your kind of low level time converting these checkpoints or something.
Right, like conquering the map.
Yeah. And then once you reach max level, it turns back to enemy territory. But every night that we signed in, as our main goal was just to acquire more gear levels.
Oh, right. And then, yeah, so what would happen is we'd kind of spend a night of playing, capture most of one zone or whatever, and play like in another zone. And then we'd go to sleep, come in the next day, and suddenly the whole zone is red again, and we'd lose it. And remember how on like the night we actually did quit, we were like, oh no, we're going to have to do some more of those radio broadcasts. Remember, we were just going around busting up the propaganda broadcasts?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was grinding in the purest sense, where we were just doing the exact same things,
Right,
even the exact
and-
same checkpoints or
and-
broadcasts or whatever, over and over and over and over and over
Right,
and over
and
again.
each of those missions was kind of just exactly the same as any other propaganda broadcast.
And
You
the
would-
same ones that we had done in Concord
right,
when we
and
were lower level.
to add insult to injury, we were actually doing the same map points and busting up the same
the
propaganda
same exact map
broadcast.
points where you really start to recognize them. You're like, oh yeah, in this one it's
Right,
better to go up in the
yeah,
tower. or whatever.
remember you had that one, I guess it was a shipping crate with a little
Yeah,
wall
yeah.
on it, and we would go on that same one. And then the game would kind of send the enemies from the exact same area each time.
Oh
too.
yeah.
So it was this dreamlike replay where
Yeah.
you're doing the exact same thing, and like maybe it's a little different if you shoot the guys on the left instead of the right first, but essentially we were just grinding propaganda broadcasts like
And
day in day out.
I think the game didn't exactly intend for us to do that. I think the game intended for us to be in the dark zones, kind of messing
Well,
around with
no,
little
that's,
PvP. Or
Yeah, that's true and not true at the same time, because the dark zone progression was different than the gear progression. So almost anything you did in the dark zone, other than getting those, remember they were called irradiated objects.
like
or-
contaminated.
Oh yeah,
weapons or whatever.
contaminated weapons. So you could maybe upgrade your gear in the dark zone, but more likely you would just kind of be playing in the dark zone. And it had its own levels, remember?
Yeah,
We were like dark zone level 5 or level 8 or something like that.
I guess that's true. I was just trying to defend the game that it's not like there was nothing to break up the monotony, because you could also do like bounties.
Oh,
Or
right. Yeah,
like-
there was lots of stuff to do, but the experience...
I would say there's some stuff to do, but the main thing it was clear that we ought to be doing is getting XP and just getting the rest of the way to max level.
Right, and once you could kind of see that in sight, it almost got boring to be like... Because then... Oh, but a big problem I had with it is you were constantly just refreshing and upgrading your gear.
Oh yeah.
And so every piece of gear below level 500 was meaningless, but the game still kind of asked you to think really hard about it, because you did want to make your guy better. So there was this irritating, like, what's the word? Like
Churn.
yeah, it's a churn, but also like a dissonance where you want to think about your gear and you want to improve your gear and get all the right little bonuses and remember the red, yellow, blue colors and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're trying to like upgrade the gear, but the game is just relentlessly and ruthlessly telling you how just upgrade and get the higher level piece of gear. So it was almost punishing you for kind of trying to like think about your build and how everything's set up and how everything works together. Because within 4 more hours of playing, every piece of gear that you got and maybe thought about would pretty much be irrelevant. I mean, we talked about this.
We talked about this in the last podcast. So anyway, John had bought Ubi package or something. I don't know what
it was. I guess it was during E3.
Oh.
They had a PlayStation mega sale, so they finally had like the 100 and like so Ghost Recon at full price with all the DLC and everything. I think they actually want like $120 for that, which is
worth it.
It's
I
worth
feel
it,
like I
but
would've
man,
been
that's
happy.
painful.
Yeah.
But anyway, during the sale, they dropped it to like $25 or something.
But
so.
didn't you get like a bunch of games?
Oh yeah, then we got Crew 2. And we even got Rainbow Six.
Oh
Siege,
yeah. I
but we
thought you
haven't-
got some kind of package or something.
Oh yeah, well it was like every Ubisoft thing was just
Bundle.
on Ultra sale.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But it wasn't a publisher sale
I
either.
see,
Like
I
there was
see.
tons of stuff on sale, and boy, when they make those mega sales, it's so hard to resist like buying games. It's just stupid.
Even if your PlayStation can't hold them anymore.
Oh yeah, our PlayStation is like it's finished. We even have the external hard drives and stuff, and those, of course, they got full immediately.
Yeah.
But the
So
other,
I- so-
okay,
so-
I was just about to go on like a tangent, but I shouldn't do it, I guess. What?
Now,
Just
you want to go on the tangent?
my problem with PlayStation's extended storage. So, okay, PlayStation 4, they just came out with using extended storage, which In other words, is like plugging in an external hard drive to play all your games off of. Now that's awesome. It's cool. You can kind of, it opens up a lot more options, and you can take it places and stuff. But anyway, when you have it like that, you pretty much can't install games to your home hard drive or your main hard drive. So they kind of turn it into this really bizarre system where suddenly your main and only storage is the external storage. And it's annoying being bullied like that, because it makes it a lot harder on us, the users, to manage that, and it makes the main hard drive into almost this worthless garbage. And that also would be cool, except it's really difficult to unplug the external storage, and it's real finicky. So anytime like the PlayStation gets turned off, or you think of unplugging it without first, like ejecting it or whatever, you're in trouble, and you're gonna
risking losing all your games.
And like it's one of those things where it kind of breaks so profoundly, and it tells you it's gonna repair the hard drive.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We're already using a hard drive that failed on us once in those extended drives, so it's just kind of like a clunky, bad system. But it is a nice thing they did, I guess. But you wouldn't be happy with that as a solution.
When we try to get Bird over here to get on camera, not interested, and now that we're trying to do this, he's just cooing and fluttering around back there.
He's literally fluttering everywhere in the house right now.
Well, anyway, let's get to the good stuff.
Okay.
All this gabbering, if anybody sat through it, we're trying to, for once, share just an awesome game. So cool for so many reasons. But playing Ghost Recon really made me hate Division. There's so many things in Ghost Recon that I really appreciate, I think are so cool, it's so much fun. And then now I understand a little more what a lot of Division 2 has kind of a lot of the same ideas. And then I didn't get them when even those the NPCs running around, and they kind of help you a bit and take over your base and stuff, just nowhere near as cool as the Rebels.
Right.
In Ghost Recon.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to even figure out where to start, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just blathering through. Oh, say what you were gonna say about our first mission.
Oh, right. So okay, Ghost Recon, it's kind of like Division, but it has, I guess the main difference is it's a much bigger world.
The scale, yeah.
And there's a stealth component, which actually is just really fun.
The stealth component is so much more legitimate and so much more fun, so much better to attempt to operate in and work within the reward and kind of
right. And it makes you kind of think about what you're doing rather than just going in guns blazing. But anyway, related to that, so the very first mission in Ghost Recon is you kind of sneak up to this weird camp, and there's these ugly guys there who turn out to be enemies. They're like Santa Blanca soldiers or whatever. And we had been just hard playing Division 2, and it told us to go up and I guess interrogate him or grab him or capture him. And so we were kind of sneaking around, and we shot a couple of guys who were just minding their own business actually. And then we came up to the kind of mission guy, and he's standing in a little hut or something, and Genevieve just completely unloads on him. She shoots him in the face and the chest 3 or 4 times, and then it puts a big "you failed" or "mission failed" skull on the screen. And we're like, oh god. Again. Yeah, so it's just funny because almost every game you would just shoot that guy, I guess.
So one of the main things that really made this game different from Division, that I think is kind of a good thing to talk about first, I'm reminded of it because another one of our first missions we attempted to do is defend the radio. You turn on the radio, whatever, you got to defend the position for 45 seconds or something.
It's 2.5 minutes, I think.
Yeah. But man, we failed this mission, the first mission, over and over and over again. We kept trying again.
Yeah, we failed just a million times.
And we were like, we're not killing the enemies fast enough. This guy has range on the radio, blah, blah. Then I think the next thing we did is we drove some cars over to kind of create some cover in a buffer zone.
we had kind of noticed they were driving cars up to assault the radio or whatever.
Yeah.
So we left cars kind of like in the road where they were going to be approaching from. And
Yeah. So that was one of the first things we did, and then I think next we figured out to start setting some like mines or something.
Right, we like had explosives and mines kind of set at the outskirts, which is also really funny because of how you have to like interact with the civilians and you're Mr. CIA setting mines in like other people's villages and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's another thing.
So anyway, the main difference that's so like appreciable between this game and Division 2 is that everything you do in Ghost Recon, you're really kind of like actively figuring it out yourself, how you want to accomplish the mission, what exactly you want to do, how you want to go into it to get it done. And you have to kind of use your brain and think about like what is it that you want to do? Do you want to go in completely stealth and try to quietly kill one guy at a time until you like get a path to your objective or whatever it is? Do you want to go in the helicopter and just blaze enemies down with the grenade launcher or the helicopter gun? Do you want to set mines all around or set proximity mines and just nuke the whole village and everything that lives and walks in it? Do you want to go in Rambo style and hope not to die?
Right. And it's like really cool to play a game like that, because in that first mission where we were defending the radio, it wasn't like we shot better or we like had you know what I mean?
Right. In
and
fact, we couldn't figure out, no matter how many times we tried just shooting the enemies as they came to the radio.
Right.
We couldn't even pass it that
surround
way.
you and just shoot you in the back and you die.
And destroy the radio.
So that's like really cool because you can kind of think through the mission, and so what we put those roadblocks there and kind of succeeded as a result, because then the enemies didn't have such direct paths and lines to us to kill us. So we could kind of control like the area the enemies were approaching from. And that's such like a different kind of mode of thought for a video game. Like in ESO, for example, it's like, oh, well, change your gear or like, get another healer or something like that,
Yeah, if you fail. If you're talking about if you fail.
Right, if you fail. And all like the failures are just kind of a matter of maybe playing better or having better gear or like a different build or, all that stuff. But to actually succeed in Ghost Recon, there's a huge component of it that has to do with your own
planning and thinking things through.
And thinking ahead. And man, it's really kind of like unique for a game, I'd say. Like we haven't played one exactly like that.
Yeah. And there are even things like sometimes it'll say to destroy something and you can just send a drone in to blow it up and never even like enter the enemy compound per se.
You could have the drone in there, blow it up and kind of quietly sneak away, just like an actual CIA man might do something like that,
And then the enemies in their compounds, they have all these different assets like a generator and like an alarm system, and you can discover all those things in advance and then like take one down and proceed that way. And then I thought you wanted to talk about how different the skills were in the game compared to Division 2 too. But I wanted to say then with your drone in Ghost Recon, they give you all these different methods and ways that it could work, where you could be using it to just manually destroy enemies and blow them up, or you can be using it to take down electronic devices.
Right, or with Noisemaker, you could kind of have it make noise and distract the enemies.
So I guess I can't think of any other game we play where, and then it's not just planning and thinking how you're going to accomplish this particular mission, but you keep on your toes and have to keep planning and thinking what you're going to do through your next like 10 minutes of game too. There was one time when we were playing in the beginning, I don't know, I went to go get us a snack or something, and we were kind of like chilling at the side of the road, and I was joking that it was like the two agents were like eating some Burger King at the side of the road in a car or something. But anyway, I don't know. We were like eating our snack and staring at the screen, and then we were like sighted by Unidad, which is
Who
like,
are the kind of cop-like bad guys of the land? They're like the military.
yeah. And so while we were trying to like eat a cracker or whatever the heck we were eating,
Right, these guys rode up on us and
These
just started shooting.
yeah, and then we maybe blew up one of their cars, and then like 2 or 3 more came, and it turned into this huge flaming like 45
Yeah,
car wreck.
it turned into just just like 2 city blocks worth of blown up cars, and we were kind of stuck in the middle, and everything was blowing up, and there were Unidad guys and like Santa Blanca guys all swirling around, and we fought them for like about an hour before we just died in a blaze of glory.
Yeah, but it was really funny to imagine the 2 kind of terrorist agents or whatever. The guys are supposed to be operatives trying to enjoy a snack and then causing that huge 40-car flaming pileup.
Oh, well, we didn't explain what even the premise of the game is.
Oh, yeah, the premise of the game.
So it's really cool. I mean, I guess it's like being a CIA Black Ops guy just going into a really realistic rendering of Bolivia. So if you've ever wanted to kind of casually destabilize a government for yourself, that's kind of what the game is about.
To terrorize a populace and casually destabilize a government.
Right, through all kinds of sabotage, assassination, theft. Remember, we stole some, but hacking. We hack into people's computers and transfer money.
Yeah.
Oh, we do frame ups. Like one of the missions yesterday, we killed some important lieutenant to like Santa Blanca, which is the evil drug cartel. And the whole idea of the mission is that you grab the shotgun shells of somebody in the cartel who had this special shotgun, and you plant the shells on this guy's body who you killed in order to create internal strife among the cartel. So it's always these really like sordid, dark kind of CIA missions that when you like find out about them 40 years later, like every page says redacted and it's all like blacked out and everything, and it's just dirty.
Another kind of overall thing about the game that reminded me that I wanted to talk about. So I read one full Tom Clancy book now. I read Rainbow Six, and I started on another one, and I was really surprised how Ghost Recon, to me, it really embodies the spirit of Tom Clancy. There's so much there that is like kind of just like in Tom Clancy, like the books are filled with all this kind of like information about, like the one has all this information about like the Soviet Union's like grain production or whatever, and for like this time.
Those briefings and stuff in the game, right?
Oh, yeah. But let me try to think what else I think were like the hallmarks, at least, of these like Tom Clancy books. They're all about this like group of cool bros, like getting something cool done. And then in the end of Rainbow Six, they can't like arrest these people, so they kind of terrorize them and like send them out in the jungle after like shooting at them or something. Wait, I'm getting off track here. What am I trying to say about Rainbow Six? Or what am I trying to say about Tom Clancy? Oh, it's filled with all this cool like information about like other countries and what they're doing and stuff. And
and in Ghost Recon, it's so cool because almost all the content in the game is this really kind of cool backstory and information about Bolivia.
The content in the game is amazing. It's so much fun to watch the videos and read the little briefs and stuff.
Yeah, read the briefs, and there's like local legends, so they tell about kind of geographic formations and stuff. And I don't know if it's actually true to Bolivia, but I kind of feel like it might be. And
well, we looked up some of the stuff, and I think some of the stuff is like true.
Right. Oh,
like we looked up the narco corridos.
Narco corrido music.
Yeah, because
and the music in the game is just awesome.
Oh yeah, but that's a different topic. I wanted to talk about that.
Okay, I just remembered another thing that's kind of like the Tom Clancy. But remember, you were saying you liked that Russian agent guy who saved the world or whatever.
Yeah, in Rainbow Six.
And yeah, in Ghost Recon, all the characters the villains, like cartel members, they're just so kind of beautifully drawn and like
Really well
characterized.
developed. You know far more
Right.
about them
You
than
learn
you know
about
about your
them.
CIA
Yeah,
buddies.
you learn about their personal lives and like their little dramas going on. And you see all like the really cool stuff they do, like the musician guy. Or remember like the one lady who kind of was in charge of the finances for the cartel.
Yeah, and like the
Oh, and like
religious
they're
nut
all,
lady.
oh yeah, the religious lady. They all have these like really important, high-ranking jobs, and they're like really doing something and living their lives in Bolivia as cocaina guys. And you almost feel bad like wrecking them and killing them.
Yeah.
Right, but that's kind of like it's like in the spirit of Tom Clancy too, where there's like cool villains.
It's so in the spirit of Tom Clancy. And then I couldn't believe seeing the videos in Rainbow Six or in what are we playing? Ghost Recon. How wonderful they were, and then I remembered those Division 2
Oh, those
videos.
like bizarre snuff films.
Yeah, they were like little snuff films. And then man, I just don't know what they are thinking, because if there's one thing Tom Clancy didn't write about, it's like local gangs taking over a city or something in some kind of, oh, that's the other thing, a post-apocalyptic world. Tom Clancy didn't write post-apocalypse books. I mean,
Right.
stop me if I'm wrong here, but the whole thing that was like so exciting and cool about the books is they like showed this kind of like interesting look at what could be going on, or some
Right,
things that were
or
like going on.
maybe alternative history almost.
Yeah, almost like alternative history or something. What's that most popular one that became like the sappy movie? Oh, we tried to watch one of like the movie of the
Oh,
Tom
God,
Clancy
that
book. It was
one with
awful. It was so
Harrison
bad.
Ford, I think it was. I
Yeah,
don't
Red
remember who
Storm
it was.
Rising or something. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
awful. I enjoyed the book, but man, I would not attempt to watch another one of those awful movies.
Right.
Anyway, though, what was I blathering about here? Just the Division 2. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah,
what.
I
And maybe
was-
they didn't read any Tom Clancy books, or maybe like I'm missing the point, or that was the best they could come
Well,
up with, kind of
it's-
gangs.
it's
overrunning
their own,
DC.
Yeah, like their post-apocalypse idea, and
Yeah.
I guess they didn't have much material to work with. But if you even compare in Division 2 how much you learn about those gangs, remember there was like the Black Tusks,
Mhm.
and then there were the local kind of toughs who it said they felt they had been oppressed by US government or something.
Mhm.
And then there was one more gang, and you don't learn anything about them. You don't know who their leaders are. There's kind of nothing cool about them. And like they just kind of suck. They're like putties essentially. But then when you're playing Ghost Recon, everybody, like the enemies are like admirable in a way.
Yeah. They're all well developed at the very least, and
Right.
there is a lot of cool other like information there, like about the narco music and like
Oh,
the
right.
different things about the cocaine.
Oh yeah, and there's tons of stuff about cocaine, and they talk about the chemicals that are used to produce it, and you have to go kind of bust up the mines where they get some chemical that's used to cut cocaine with.
Yeah, and that all
And-
that kind of stuff is the stuff that really reminds me of the Tom Clancy
Right,
books.
and it's just so cool, and you blow up their cocaine stores and all kinds of like terrible stuff. But you really feel like when you're playing the game, you're like going through this world where they are producing cocaine and they're working to transport and smuggle it. Oh, do you remember when we were blowing up the submarines of El Cerebro?
Yeah.
And it had this really cool stuff about how the Bolivian cartel guys were purchasing old Soviet submarines and kind of custom modding them and driving them underwater to Florida. And that's like so cool, and you get to see the submarines and you get to blow them up, and they show like schematics for the submarines, and you really see this like other world, and it's so nicely developed and cool.
So things we've talked about so far, like overall things we're really enjoying about the game. The story, how it really is Tom Clancy like. Oh, the way that you have to kind of play with your head, think ahead and like plan and figure out how you're going to do something, not play with your buttons or your gear.
Right.
And then we were going to briefly talk about how much we loved the sound design. This is the first game we've played, I don't know, in years that we haven't just like blasted Spotify music over it.
Right. And we we went a really long time without it, and we kind of tried blasting the Spotify music.
It was
over
awful.
Yeah, it was
It
terrible.
ruined the game. But normally, every other game that we've played, it's just a huge improvement.
Right.
It's a huge improvement to blast
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
other type of music you like and not have to listen to like the wretched garbage that's coming out of the
Right.
game.
And
Even at the expense of not hearing like important things you want to hear, like the bullets flying around you or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. And in so many cases, the music really does add, like just crappy music you're listening to on your own adds a lot to the game because it's this nicer sound over the bad sound of the game.
Yeah, yeah. And then a lot of times you're doing this really repetitive, bogus
Oh, right. And that's
crap like in Path of Exile.
right. And that's the thing too, is the sound in those games becomes very repetitive and
Yeah.
it bores you and you don't really want to hear it anymore. So like, of course, just put music over it. But then in Ghost Recon, when we put music over the game, we really like lost a lot. Like
Yeah.
the game seemed like a worse game. It seemed like we couldn't.
And it
tell
was
what
actually
going
hard to
on.
function.
Right.
It was hard to
yeah.
function without hearing like the shouts of the enemies or like
right,
the
exactly. And even to the point that like I think the game could be improved even more if we both put on headphones.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
remember the
yeah.
Predator fight
yeah.
and the kind of disorienting sound and stuff. So that's like it's a nice thing to actually have played a game where the sound design was
great.
done nicely and it could stand on its own.
And it's not just I guess I'm not just saying I like it because it's actually useful for playing the game and it doesn't like annoy me. But also John had the game on and I heard the ambient sound coming from it from across the room. I couldn't believe it was a video game.
Right.
I've never heard a video. It was making such like a nice, pleasant. There's like a radio in the game that you could turn on.
Oh yeah, the radio comes on it. Oh, and there's ambient radios in the towns. So sometimes you'll be in a town and there's like somebody kind of blasting a little boombox. And that it's like so atmospheric and cool to go along with the Bolivian nature sounds.
Yeah, yeah.
And the sound of the vehicles or the sound of the helicopters and planes and
the game sounded great though. Like even from the other room, it was such pleasant background noise that it would be nice to like study to or something like that. Which I can't.
Right.
Again, I can't say of any other game. Like I think we started out playing ESO. With the sound on, that was a mistake, and then eventually we just blasted music through it.
Right.
I know we blasted music through Fortnite. I know we blasted it through Path of Exile.
Yeah,
Monster Hunter, we blasted music through it.
Yeah, Path of Exile, we blasted music. But if you think about it, I would bet anything that the sound files for Ghost Recon are just kind of huge compared to like Path of Exile, for instance. They're like ESO with really sparse, bad sound. Where remember in ESO, like each little spell had its own kind of really loud, annoying like noise it generated.
Yeah.
And like I guess in Ghost Recon, there's even the background music is really cool.
Yeah,
it's like kind of atmospheric.
I really didn't recognize it as a game and couldn't believe it when I just like heard it coming from the TV from across the room.
Right, and that's really appreciable, I'd say.
All those factors we kind of just talked about combined also make it's funny because we play this game probably shorter time periods, I think.
Much shorter.
Than we've played other games because you can really, when your concentration is shot and you start getting impatient, it's just like game over.
Right.
You can't keep going. You can't keep grinding. You can't just like fly the helicopter somewhere else.
They present you, say, with a huge base full of enemies. And unless you're kind of ready to play the game and think about how you're going to try to infiltrate that base, you're pretty much going to be spotted and in a huge firefight immediately. Yeah. And that's really different because I feel like most games you almost prefer to play spaced out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we don't play, like, I guess other games, an average play session for us might be between 3 and 5 or 6 hours. That sound about right?
Yeah, it's been a long time, I think, since I don't know.
Right, but Ghost
Recon,
since we played
any game that long.
Right, Ghost Recon,
It's like hard cap
two and a
at
half
2.5
hours, like a
or
long
something.
movie. Like for as long as you can concentrate on a long movie is about how much you can kind of concentrate in
Yeah, or at
Ghost
least we
Recon.
can. And then in other games like more grindy games or like Path of Exile, you might start to lose your focus, but you just can go on kind of jamming your skills and having like enough
Right, and
relative success. But
yeah,
like
and
we were
kind of
talking about,
cruising through the game, kind of.
I guess I already said it, but you start getting impatient and losing focus, and you can't even participate anymore.
Right. And I mean that in a way that feels right too.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
shouldn't really be able to like play and concentrate on something for 6 straight hours, but
Or be able to, this is I know a lot of people. Oh, I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast or on the website, but I know a lot of people would play a game and watch a movie at the same time.
oh
It
yeah,
always
yeah.
seems, well, anyway, this is not a game that you could possibly even remotely do that with.
Right. There's no way you'd be able to focus on one or the other at any time,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, but then we were laughing about that, and I know a lot of guys would do like grinding stuff in ESO and kind of put a movie on. We were laughing about that, but then we started putting basketball on while we played some game.
Oh yeah.
What game was that we were doing?
Boy, was that
Maybe it was Path of
it was
Exile.
either Path of Exile or Division. Like whatever we were playing during the playoffs, the
That
NBA
was really
playoffs.
something. That was really
Oh
something to
yeah,
have to
this
try
kind of
to.
like true multimedia going on with all these different screens. We had music, video game, and basketball all
Oh yeah,
going at
that's right.
once.
We had the music going too.
Yeah. Right, it's ridiculous.
I don't know if I would do it again, but it was something to experience at least a couple
Yeah,
times.
just to kind of fry your brain. But I feel like we've talked so much about how cool Ghost Recon is, and I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface
Oh
of
yeah,
all the cool stuff that there like is in the
is.
game.
Wait,
Or
let me finish. I was just trying to go through the top level things about it. Now you're just making me forget. Okay. I'm not going to remember now. Oh, but another thing I wanted to mention before we start talking about some of the more granular things we really love about the game is that we put it on Spanish language.
oh
It's
right,
been amazing. I can't believe we never tried to just change the language in a game before.
mm-hmm.
I know Spanish some. John doesn't know it as much, but he knows some Latin and can kind of understand some stuff.
Right.
But that's been like a transformative thing too, because the interest that you have in the game. Well, first of all, it's set in Bolivia, so I think it does really add
Right.
some element of authenticity to have all the
And
voices out of it coming out in Spanish is
yeah,
like really cool.
we haven't actually tried it in English, but I would imagine it would almost begin to annoy me to hear those like English voice actor voices.
It's
going.
possible it might be pretty good.
It might be, but
We
yeah.
always put the Japanese games in Japanese just
Right,
because
right.
just
I
to
mean, it
be a
sounds way better.
weeaboo or whatever.
Yeah.
Sounds better
But
too.
I mean, a lot of the time, I think the biggest thing that really irritates about the English language voice acting is it's often just so bad, and you have to focus on it and like
Oh yeah, and
listen
it
to
keeps
those.
chirping out
You
of the
listen
screen.
to those irritating voices, and before long, they just irritate you. Remember those terrible voices in ESO? And so if you hear like a terrible Spanish language voice actor, you might not
I
notice
think
it
the
as
voice
much.
actors are great.
Oh yeah, they seem great too, and
They
like they
seem-
have a lot. They have like good range.
But maybe
they,
that's just ignorance, and a Spanish-speaking person would just be freaking annoyed by them.
right,
But
right.
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. A lot of the English voice acting in general, it just seems awful compared to what other countries
Well, I
do.
mean, so often though, like the English voice acting, just because like if you ask a group of English people to or American, like whatever, or English British, if you ask them to kind of understand the emotional tenor of a Japanese anime, there's like no chance. But those Japanese actors probably, they were coached by the actual guys who made the anime
Oh, I
or the
see what
game
you're
or
saying.
whatever. And I think, everybody or most people agree that anime dubs are just terrible. And it's always because like the voices aren't quite right, like they shout when they shouldn't be shouting. They're not conveying like the proper emotions
Emotion.
for the scene. And just ask any group of 20 to 40 people to kind of fully understand some like piece of art or like a media or whatever, and they might not do a good job. Or at
I
least
see what
those
you're
are my
saying.
thoughts
That
on
could
it.
all be true. But all I'm saying, I guess, is that if you know another language a little bit, somewhat, you should definitely try switching a game to that language, because the amount of interest and focus and enjoyment you get out of it, at least that we got
All
out of it,
right,
just
yeah.
absolutely skyrocketed. It's been
And I love to
amazing.
hear the way they refer to stuff in Spanish.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And like they call the rifles fusiles, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really cool to just call stuff like a rifle a fusile. I don't know.
Oh, one funny thing I want to mention really fast so that I don't forget is that we were joking about it would be great on PC to have an add-on that adds up how many billions in helicopter damage.
Property damage. I want a property
John
damage.
wanted property damage in general and have it calculating the cost of fixing like an Adobe wall after a bunch of bullets slammed
But
into it.
also when, there's a 16 car pile.
Yeah. I just wanted pure vehicles and helicopters because like the amount of helicopters you go through. And anyway, then in the Spanish language game, when you call a new helicopter, she says, Bowman tiene vehículos. Like as if your buddy Bowman, like, oh, Bowman has another helicopter. Like Bowman has them.
Oh, yeah.
She'll get it for us, and it's so funny and like makes us laugh every time after wasting like 2 billion more.
Right. And I don't know how much a helicopter actually costs. Maybe I could Google it real quick. But it has to be at least like 20 or 40
look it up
million
on there. I
dollars.
guess I'm
Okay,
kind of curious.
You
about
could
it.
talk and I'll Google.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I remembered the other general overall thing that I wanted to say about what makes this game so great and refreshing compared to a lot of other games we've played. It's far and away, as tough as it is and as often as we die, it's far and away the most kind of like fun, chill, and stress-free game we've played in so long. Our mood playing for like as long as we're playing is always just like great. And I was thinking about it, and I think it's because when you die in this game, you were always just kind of like playing like a jackass.
Oh, right.
You always made some kind of like really idiotic, retarded mistake. You end up taking just like a full round of bullets straight in the gut.
Just in the face
In the
sometimes.
face,
and or like we died yesterday where we had gone really far up into a base and we were kind of tired and stuff. And then the enemy started charging at us.
Just
and
pouring
then
out.
about 3 vehicles full of like 4 guys with machine guns pulled up behind us, and they were just they were like all 6 guys unloading on us at once. And of course we like died, and you look at where we were positioned and it's like, well, anyone would have died there. Like anyone
would have died there.
even like Chuck Norris or whatever.
Wait, so we got the results here.
Okay,
this helicopter looks just like the ones in.
Oh, so only $700,000. So they're actually a lot cheaper than I thought.
You're looking at this one. We don't fly those in the game. We fly this one.
This one is 700 grand. Oh, this one. Oh, 1.7 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so about 2 million a pop.
Yeah, that looks identical to the one that we fly in Ghost Recon.
Oh yeah,
that one's like a starter helicopter.
Right. So a cheap helicopter is about $250,000, and a expensive one that looks like the kind of military helicopters they've got in Ghost Recon's about $2 million.
Yeah,
So
and our guys are always slamming them.
Yeah. Oh, we used it's so funny, but you can kind of use the helicopters to stop enemy vehicles. So you could kind of like a crazy bird or something, just go and try to like smash your helicopter into the enemy vehicle. Oh, and sometimes like when there's an enemy helicopter, I like to try to land on their rotors to break them with like our helicopter. And it's just like, it's funny and kind of cool to be like using a $2 million product in that way. But just speaking to our moods, sorry, now I'm going back, but speaking to like our moods playing the game, this is one of the few games I feel like where failure is just really fun, or it's often the case that when you fail,
it's often the case that when we die, we burst out laughing because we realize what we were doing was so like beyond the pale.
Yeah, and just what was going on was so like stupid.
Yeah,
where like you kind of drive a truck into like a camp of enemies and start trying to like have a firefight with them, and there's like explosions and chaos, and there's rebels rushing in. And it's
And then
always just
in other games, when you die, you can be completing the same content and kind of make 17 different types of mistakes and die 17 different ways and get more and more frustrated. Oh, and we were talking about in Monster Hunter
oh right.
how kind of punishing it was. I guess we were talking about how in Monster Hunter you had this like concern of killing the monster, and then you had a concern of making sure the monster didn't kill you. And then you had the higher order concern that you had to break that certain part of the monster because what you really wanted was like his horn or whatever.
Right.
And if you didn't accomplish all those pretty high level things, it was all a waste. It was all
Right.
down the
Like
drain.
the whole you work really hard for a long time, or like, 25 or 40 minutes in Monster Hunter, and you work hard, and then if you fail at the end, it's like all ripped away from you, and then you just have to kind of try again and like play at a high level again. And oh, but another thing we were talking about in Monster Hunter is how much it was a war of attrition and managing those items.
Oh yeah.
And remember how we were saying, like, so in Monster Hunter you can get poisoned, and when you're poisoned in that game, it almost becomes like a quick time event thing where you have to scroll over to your poison antidote and kind of drink it and avoid the monster all at once. And so anytime a bad thing happens to you in Monster Hunter, you begin having to manage your items.
Mm-hmm.
And so you manage those items, and it asks a lot of you to do that. And so you kind of have to intelligently use the items, but also manage and conserve them.
Yeah,
And there's just a huge
all those things really contribute to the stress in that game. Like the amount of
Right.
stress I felt going after, what was that one with the horn beast, like Diablo or whatever the heck it was,
Diablos, yeah.
compared to seeing like just like 35 Unidad helicopters and vans driving at me is like just
Right.
zero for
it's
Ghost
just-
Recon and
yeah,
like
yeah.
100 for Monster
Just
Hunter.
completely different, like it's or opposite, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, I remember one of the things that would really get to me in Monster Hunter is we would start a fight with a monster, right? And then sometimes if I kind of took a bunch of heavy blows in the beginning and like used up all my potions, kind of, I would almost want to just like throw the controller down and be done with the round and say like, okay, let's just start over. We got off to a bad start and like screw this game. But I mean, contrast that to Ghost Recon where you could be kind of trying to sneak into an enemy base or whatever, and you get caught and you start to get into a firefight, and like then there's all these crazy vans chasing you and stuff. And when you make a mistake like that, you kind of get this kind of cool, fun burst of play and like getting overwhelmed by the game and like trying to fight it or live through it or whatever.
Becomes
And-
your new challenge, and it's
Right,
often
right.
just as much fun or more fun than
As succeeding. Or just as fun
Oh,
to
yeah,
like
yeah.
fail in that way as it is to calmly complete the mission like a silent killer or whatever.
yeah. And then if you do complete it, you feel like $1 million.
Right, right. So, it's like the game, when you mess up, you're not just harshly punished, and you're not then like working against this inventory management, and like in Monster Hunter even there was like clock management where
Yeah.
if you were doing a bad job tracking that monster, or you kind of space out and take a wrong turn on the map,
Or
you
he
could-
just flies. He
Oh, yeah,
just
he would
whips
just-
himself to the other side
right,
of the map.
and yeah, you would sometimes spend 5 minutes tracking the monster, and then once you found him, he would just fly up in the air and go. And it was so frustrating when stuff like that would happen.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so rare to get frustrated by like annoying game stuff in Ghost Recon. So that's like really cool too.
Yeah, yeah. I think those are the main general overall things we were loving about
right.
it. And before
I
you
have another thing to
Okay,
add.
okay.
The way they planned the skill progression in Ghost Recon is just awesome. Your guy goes from being really small and pathetic
Just a gun guy, just a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
gunner.
to, by kind of the midpoint of the game, or as you're approaching the end, you're just this awesome like Rambo guy. and you can take a lot more bullets, and you have all these really cool, amazing, awesome skills, and you can kind of like blow up everything in a 1 mile radius with these really powerful explosions. And
No, I mean, we need to clarify here. There's no skills in the game other than sending your drone. You're using items, right?
well, yeah, but
But
the
then
skill
there's
points go
skill
toward
points.
the grenade launcher, the C4,
Yes.
more frag grenades.
They're like items that you can use. And then you also can put points in like your stamina.
Oh,
and
right,
that
but
kind of
there's
stuff.
all those rebel abilities, like the spotting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then you can call a helicopter for yourself. Like in the beginning, you
Oh
have
yeah,
to
those
rely
are like
on
abilities.
right. But
Wait,
you
so
also
let's
get
just outline it really fast so people can understand what we're talking about here. There are, in the beginning of the game, you're just a little gun guy.
you're a guy with a gun,
Yeah.
essentially.
Then you put skill points in, and some of the skill points are things like for your health or stamina, yada yada. Others unlock items to use, such as frag grenades
And
or
the drone too, like the
in the
drone
drone.
explosive, and you get better at marking enemies.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big thing we didn't actually talk about, but the kind of like gameplay process of marking the enemies, like like marking the enemy with the drone and getting rid of the blobs on the map.
Yep, that was another thing that really like bewildered me in Division 2. Like, remember we got that scanner and it said it was going to like mark the enemies,
right.
and I was like, this is a useless piece of
Yeah.
crap. Well, like, why would anyone want this? Oh, and there was also like a drone attachment that would like mark the enemies, and I thought like junk, like the turret just marks the enemies by shooting them. Why would anyone
Right.
use this? And then in Ghost Recon, spotting and marking the enemies is not only like completely crucial, but it's also just like a ton of fun to do with the
It's
drone
really
and
fun
stuff.
to like use your drone and look over
scout
the
out the
base and
territory
figure out
and-
like where guys are standing, and you even come across sleeping guys sometimes who you can cruelly like blow up. But
Yeah. Okay, wait. So back to what we're talking about. You get, and then you get your skill points, unlock items, as well as giving whatever minor buffs to your character. And then there's the ability wheel, you could call it, of stuff involving the rebels and other things you could do. What's on there? Calling a vehicle for yourself.
There's a call vehicle. There's guns for hire, which
brings
get
a little
army of rebels to fight by your side. Then there's spotting, which spots the enemies, and diversion, which is another little army of rebels who kind of
They make a fuss
rush
to
in, and
attract the enemy's attention.
right. And boy, I feel like there was one more, but we rarely use it, so I'm not.
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
had vehicle spotting.
Yeah.
It's when you hold R1 and go down. It's that one, but I don't quite remember. Oh, it's mortar. That was really
mortar.
cool too. So you can call for a rebel mortar strike.
Yeah, we should use it more often, but
Right,
it's hard
well,
to get it right.
I use it pretty often
Sometimes,
actually. Yeah. And it calls down just like a hellish rain of like 8 mortar strikes or something over a huge area. It's really cool.
Anyway, then what I wanted to say is so cool about this game is the process of getting better is actually the process of becoming more adept at using all these different things you have at your disposal, whether it's like a flare gun or the little distraction or the army of rebels or the mortar.
Yeah, like there's all these different kind of technological items or like pieces of stuff you can use.
Oh, and then there's also like night vision, heat vision.
Night vision and thermal vision. Those are the other things.
So those are other like tools.
Right, and those skills make such a huge difference. And I guess I was just so impressed with it because your guy gets so much more powerful, but it comes about through just like using and familiarizing yourself with that technology. And it's almost as much about you, the player, using those cool tools as it is about the game giving you like overpowered ability or more damage or anything like that.
Yeah, or like in another game, you have a skill and there's like absolutely a best and most proper use case scenario for it.
Right.
That you should always like use your AoE or whatever in like this situation. Here you did a bad one. This is a good one. It's like kind of straightforward and like cut and dry. But then in this game, you have all these tools and like how you use them is kind of up to you. And the more successful you are with accessing them and using them successfully, the easier the game kind of gets and the better you get at the
As
game.
you begin to, in the game, kind of figure out how to use those abilities in actual combat situations, then you become far more powerful. And it's like just as much about you, the player, as it is about your character in the game.
Yeah, or like the ability itself.
Right.
I feel like those were the main things we're really loving about this game. Did you have anything to add? I know I have a lot more notes here.
Let's see. Just looking at my notes. I mean, I feel like we kind of covered most of it. I mean, all we've been doing is kind of raving about how cool the game is. And I do feel like just pretty much anybody should try it. Oh, one thing I think that's also really cool about the game, but we haven't talked about yet because it doesn't really apply to us, is that if you play Ghost Recon solo, there's this whole other huge component of the game that includes controlling and giving orders to your NPC allies.
Oh yeah, that's probably
so you get like
cool.
a team of 4 and you can do something called sync shot, which is where you target the enemies hopefully before combat, but you could do it in combat too, and you can kind of mark them, and I think you get 3 sync shots because you have 3 NPC allies.
Mm-hmm.
So you can mark 3 guys, and then you can give the order to your NPC teammates to
take
fire.
Them all down at once.
Yeah, and it's like they really thought about how they could make it be a really meaningful, kind of cool, fun solo experience. And like, I even would try it solo. It looks really kind of cool and fun, and the AI teammates heal you, and they revive you. And you can buff them, so like it would be cool for a solo player to be buffing those AI teammates. But anyway, it's like, I was just gonna say I would recommend it to anyone who like plays with their friends too, just because there's so much like chaos and stuff going on, and I almost sometimes wish that we did have like some more guys who would play with us, because I think for as cool as Ghost Recon is for the 2 of us, it could be even cooler for like a group of 3 or 4 people to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, I just give it like the highest recommendation almost no matter what.
I saw one important thing that we wanted to talk about, a hilarious thing. So when we were driving the cars in this game.
Oh, God.
Sometimes you gotta like catch a guy and interrogate him or whatever. You're not trying to kill him, or sometimes you gotta follow a guy without being detected. So the guy would get in a car or whatever, and then we would get in a car and we'd be like, man, he's going so fast. And he'd be going like 90 miles an hour, and in the car we'd be going like 20, 30 miles an hour.
We would like cap out about 30 miles an hour.
Yeah,
and we would get in
and we gave up and we're like, we gotta chase him in the helicopter. Like, I don't know, something's wrong with the cars, like it's bugged. So anyway, then one night, why did we turn on Crew 2?
Well, we were done playing Ghost Recon for like whatever reason.
Okay,
and then we just turned on Crew 2, and like
Don's coworker recommended we try Crew 2. So anyway, we turn on Crew 2. We're all ready to play or whatever, and like, man, the car won't. The car's only going like 30 miles an hour. Then we changed the car to stick or whatever instead of automatic. We're trying to like shift it and like gear it up. We're like, man, what is wrong? There's no way to win a race when you go this slow.
And we were capping out. These are like real like tough cars, like Chevy Z4, like freaking whatever. And I remember Genevieve got it up to like 70, and I was so impressed. And I was like, wow, like Genevieve got to 70 miles an hour. When like, the other cars are going about 140.
140 at least.
And I was still stuck doing 20.
So we're just like crashing and burning, doing the same little first crew race over and over again. I typed in Google like, car in Crew 2 won't go faster than 30 miles an hour.
Right.
And I found this whole thread of angry people, and they're like, Ubisoft needs to fix this
It
game.
was literally dozens of people.
They're like,
and not
the car, I put it in stick, like it still doesn't go faster than 30. There's no way to win a race when you're only going 30 miles an hour.
There was even a guy who said, like, you can like pass every mission in this game, but the NPC drivers just leave you completely in the dust every time.
And then somebody was like, not buying this till Ubisoft fixes the issue? And we're like, man, I don't know. I guess some of the car driving is just broken in some of these games. Anyway, then John figured out we had the trigger lock on.
Right, we had the Pro controllers, and they have the trigger lock,
Yeah.
which is it sucks for Ghost Recon because when you fire semi-auto, you really want that trigger
Yeah,
lock.
it's nice to use.
But so yeah, we had the trigger lock,
and
on.
so did all these other people without realizing it, and they're playing these like racing games,
right,
going 30 miles an hour.
It's because like essentially they have their foot just lightly tapping the gas pedal. And so we went back to Ghost Recon with the trigger lock off. And, and we couldn't fly the plane.
Oh yeah, then you have to fly, like, it's easy to fly the helicopter, drive the car, whatever, but there are these little like biplanes that you have to fly for missions in Ghost Recon. They were like, it was so hard for us to fly them. And again, I remember John found some thread where everyone's like, this fly the plane mission is just impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. I'll never get it done.
Right.
Like, I can't get these comms tools.
It was so cool because having the trigger lock on essentially turned the plane into a glider.
Oh yeah.
And that's what was so like confusing, because there were many plane missions in Ghost Recon that you could actually complete by treating the plane like a glider. And I even asked Genevieve, I was like, so does this mean that they kind of fly this plane down because they can fly from a higher to a lower elevation?
And there are planes like that. And I was like, yes, that's what a glider is.
Yeah.
You drive it up in your car and you push it off the cliff.
Yes. Right. And so I thought those like it was a glider in Ghost Recon, and it worked pretty good as a glider if you like really pull the like pitch back and up. It'll kind of like glide through the air, and you never gain elevation, but you don't lose too much either. So we would be doing these long plane missions where like the goal was like 10 kilometers away, and just trying to like glide there and crashing into the side of a mountain eventually. And we were like, there's just no way to do this. But
anyway,
of course,
solved. It's the trigger lock.
Right. Of course, we took the trigger lock off, and the plane
Works
operates
great.
like a real.
Oh,
like
and
a
now
plane.
all the driving and stuff in Ghost Recon is kind of a lot of fun. Before we were like helicopter, nothing. Like,
right.
sucks.
And we even we even stopped driving the cars, which sucked because it's actually incredibly fun to drive the cars even. And I don't know for sure, but the driving was kind of similar to Crew 2, where you could kind of do all the cool fishtailing with the handbrake and stuff. So it's like a really kind of cool, fun experience to drive in Ghost Recon. Just saying.
Yeah. So we're getting a review of ESO onto the website pretty soon.
Elder Scrolls Online.
Elder Scrolls Online. We haven't played it in a couple of years. Just kind of writing about the time we did spend playing it.
And I guess it's funny because you can really see all these people on our friends list started playing it again pretty recently. Oh. And I think that's because a new DLC came out.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure, like, if you really look into it, you can find all the new, like, heinous, hellish stuff going on with that, and, like, the new broken stuff they introduced, or the, like, 4-page
Maybe
skills.
It's great. Maybe it's great.
It might be wonderful, but we don't know. I don't think we would play that again.
Yeah. It's off your PlayStation now, I think, right?
Oh yeah, and and it's literally more than 100 gigabytes.
Yep.
So taking a game like that off your PlayStation is kind of like a permanent thing.
I wonder if half the people who still play it compulsively play it because they just can't fit anything else on their PlayStation anymore.
Right. And man, that's crazy. More than 100 gigabytes. Like, nothing even looks good in that game. But that's like beside the point. So, did we have anything more to say?
No.
Just to recap, like,
check that article out. Should be pretty entertaining read at the very least.
Right.
And
it should be posted today, I guess. But
yeah, we kind of decided we're gonna play another season of Path of Exile or something before.
Right, before writing a review or anything about it. And sometimes I wish we could write about the Division 2 or like write a review for it, but man, it's like getting hard to even remember.
I can't believe how crappy I thought Division 2 was after playing Ghost Recon. I just
right. And
I don't feel like I could recommend it to. I mean, it was fun. Oh, we didn't exactly talk about it's so many things are kind of like the same in the game, but the scale is so much smaller in Division 2, and I think
one of the things we were kind of talking about that it's almost like, I don't know if we're completely right about this, but just the worlds in Ghost Recon and Division 2 are modeled so differently.
Oh.
Where Ghost Recon is this really big, open, it seems like much of it is auto generated, which I don't know that for sure, but it seems like it.
Mm-hmm.
And there, it's such like a rich, lush environment with just tons of stuff going on. And it was closer to ESO. Remember how in ESO there were like all the bridge hopping and rock hopping?
Yeah, and
remember climbing the mountains?
Yeah, I absolutely tried to climb up the crappy Ghost Recon mountain awkwardly using like the climb command to see how far I could get on the
and
sheer rock face.
You can really like explore all this kind of terrible auto-generated computer world, and like sometimes the enemies appear on it or you can exploit it, just like in ESO how you could exploit the rocks against other players or even mobs. But then so the Division is it's like a much differently drawn game world. And so what we were talking about specifically was how it seems like the elevation in Ghost Recon had so much more meaning. And you know how you can like snipe the enemies from the hills and
in
stuff
Division
like
2 you'd often be looking for like your STD cache. I would always call them SHD cache. And you'd be like, oh, I can't find it, oh, where is it? And then you'd kind of see one of those like yellow tarps and realize that there was some hole you had to climb into to find the cache, whether it's through a window or like up onto a piece of scaffolding or something.
Little indicated part of the map where you had to climb up.
Yeah. And but we were talking about how in Division 2, like a designer put those little climb interactions in every one of those particular places.
So in the map in Division 2, it's completely drawn by a man or men or people.
Yeah.
So there's necessarily just so much fewer, there's so much like a lesser quantity of stuff in that world. Like there's less areas for the enemies to pop out. There's less areas to be flanked from or to flank the enemies. When the enemies kind of like infest or occupy certain parts of the map in Division 2, they kind of have to stay there because there's nowhere else to go, really. So, you know, it's like just comparing a man-made object to a natural object, or, you know,
or mathematically
mathematically computer-generated, which is like much more, it's closer to how nature is.
Yeah.
And I think that's why everything in Ghost Recon feels so much like lusher and fuller and richer.
Yeah.
And it's funny to think that, because you would think like, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool to have like a bespoke, hand-drawn, nice map? But for the actual experience of playing these video games, I think that kind of big, rich, computer-generated world is
actually better.
Right.
And again, it's all about this idea that like you, the player, are in control of something, or somehow using your creativity, or somehow doing something yourself, or somehow like making decisions for yourself. And it feels like a lot more like that. Just overall.
And so like, just for example, if say in Ghost Recon there was like a skill point or SHD cache thing up on like the side of a hill or in a building, like up on the side of a mountain or something, in the world of Ghost Recon there really are probably like 6 or 8 paths you could take to get there. Like you could climb up there, you could go around the back way, you could
way more than that, because you could also just slam the helicopter down on it and drive a tractor up there.
Exactly. But in Division 2,
you were saying you wanted to parachute out of the plane.
Oh yeah, we haven't done that yet, but I wanted to have us do missions by just kind of parachuting off a plane and like landing on the hill above like a base or encampment. But anyway, so in Division 2, by contrast, to get to an item on the map, there's often only one way. And so it's much more like kind of being a rat in a maze. Whereas in Ghost Recon...
That's the true nature of our city streets. Can't help it.
Right,
That's the reality.
Yeah, they like modeled the city streets. But it's just such a different feeling where the world is more open and there's many ways to approach or achieve things, as opposed to this kind of like man-made experience that, you know, they designed a nice experience, but that's like all it is. And you don't really get to like think or make decisions or, you know, just like play the game in like in a kind of like natural or like free flowing or open ended way.
Yeah, so I guess we're wrapping up here. I know the. How old is Ghost Recon Wildlands?
I believe it came out in 2017.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
it's
So
pretty
we're
new.
late.
Yeah, we're definitely
We're late to the
fu-
game here,
Oh,
but
but definitely
we love it.
yeah,
Recommending
we're
it if
looking
you also
forward
didn't play it.
to the new Ghost Recon too. I
Yeah,
think
definitely
it's
gonna
called
play that.
Breakpoint. Yeah, and like we saw some of like the new features, or I looked at them and I was just like immediately like, oh yeah, I like gotta try this game. Oh, but we also didn't even mention or scratch the surface, but we haven't stepped foot in the DLC yet.
Oh,
We
yeah.
haven't played the PvP. There's many game modes. Oh, and there's a endless wave horde mode, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought
We wanted
would
to
be
try
really
that.
fun. And we haven't tried any of those things yet. And so, looking forward
Oh,
to
I
that.
will. I will say how far we are in the game. I think John's at like World Tier 2 or whatever it's called.
Or, well, I guess they call it like World Tier 1. I mean, Ubisoft games always have such like freaky stuff in the end game,
Yeah,
but
yeah. So we only just now made it to kind of the
right
end
to
game.
max level, and then
And I
there's
always
50 tiers.
Lag a little bit.
Right. So, well, technically they start you at tier 50,
I see.
and it starts counting down. So I'm like 43
Oh,
now,
you're
and you're
43.
49.
I see.
So I'm a little bit ahead, but
'Cause
just
I'm a sluggard.
yeah. Oh, and another cool thing about Ghost Recon that I'd just like to say is it's this game where I'm not always playing better than Genevieve. And that's like kind of really cool.
Oh, yeah. I think it's because, and again, like, not all women are the same, but I'm just definitely not as good at those combo sequences that you could do.
Right. And or just like thinking back to Naruto, there's like the like
Yeah,
positioning is really important.
Oh, but
or
also
whatever.
I'm just a schlob who didn't play games as a kid.
Right, right.
So I guess that's one of the things I'm worst at. And there's just not that much of that in this game.
And in most games I tend to like outperform Genevieve, but if you watch us play, you wouldn't necessarily know that I'm like this better player or whatever. And it's often
But
the case.
in other games you'd
Oh
instantly
yeah,
know.
yeah. Like in other games it's like oh well, there's this like guy who seems to know what he's doing, and there's this other guy or a girl who's like clearly a girl.
But not in this game. So if you're
Right.
looking for something to play with somebody who isn't awesome at video games, this is probably a great pick for that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like fun, and I really like to be saved by Genevieve sometimes instead of like
Oh yeah, I had to do that mission for us. John there's one you gotta capture the Sicaro. And John just will drive the helicopter into the Sicaro, just like throw 14 grenades at the Sicaro.
And like it was funny because I just like came up to them and immediately got surrounded and shot to
And I
death.
just killed John.
Right, and then like Genevieve was kind of playing a little more conservatively and slowly shot them all, and she
I
played,
managed to get the Sicaro so that we didn't have to keep attempting that same annoying mission over and over again.
But it's really cool because it's like a really like almost skill intensive, like high fidelity game, and like you're just as good at it as me. So like I think that's kind of cool, and they must have done something right.
Yeah, another reason that we're highly recommending it. So we tried to wrap up for the past 20 minutes now or something, but now apparently we're actually done.
Okay, yep. So we're done, and goodbye. Thanks for listening. If you did.
Yeah, and visit our website, coopgaming.info.
Right,
we're making content for it, I guess.
We're still alive. So it would seem. Okay, bye.